again. This is Grant Swartzwelder, and welcome to another episode of The Grown Up Table. Today, we're going to be talking about pregnancy, the challenges associated with that, and if you're not able to do it naturally, what the different options are. But there's consequences for all of that. So let's set the table. Today, as we talked about, there's a lot of issues that people have getting pregnant, but there are ways of taking care of that through IVF, through adoption. There's other ways you can have a child, but all of those come with consequences, not only for the wife or the mother, for the husband, but also for the child and the relationships between all of those. Well, today we have a really interesting speaker, Haylee Woodcock. Now, first, I have to say your main credential for me is that you're an Aggie. And so that's fantastic because I'm also an Aggie. So good for you. But she is a math teacher, has graduated from A&M in 2016, married her husband a couple years later, and then started the process of thinking about having children. By not being able to have children naturally initially, she explored IVF and other means. That comes with a variety of challenges and issues that you have to think about. In response to that, she wrote and illustrated a book to talk about that journey and how to discuss that with her child. So welcome, Haylee. I really appreciate you being here and really look forward to hearing your story. So why don't we just start off? I think this is a fantastic book that you've provided or written. Why did you write it? Kind of give me your story, and I'm sure you can do a lot better job than what I just did. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, you basically covered it. Yeah, it's Pieces of Leah. So I did have my own whole infertility couple of years kind of journey that we went on. And when we went through IVF, it initially didn't work. Like things were just not mapping out with my eggs. So we ended up at embryo adoption. And in order to be approved to adopt embryos, you have to go to a therapist for them to say like you're okay, I
a
guess, in the
physical
right.
therapist or a
No,
psychological?
like a psychological
Okay.
therapist, like you
Okay.
and your husband or whoever whatever the situation is, the therapist has to say, okay, you guys are like in the right headspace for this. Or maybe it was just a requirement from our IVF clinic. I'm not sure if everyone has to do that. But they kind of talked with us about, it's your decision. Do you want to talk to them right off the bat, letting them know where they came from, or wait, or never tell them, or how do you want to tell family? Like basically, just you should have some sort of plan. And me and my husband were both like, okay, we're gonna make sure they know, like from the beginning. Like we'll just kind of talk about it always, so that there doesn't have to be this big moment of like, this is what happened. They just always know
Big
about it.
unveil.
Yeah. So the therapist was like, okay, a really good idea is, you can find books to read to them. So in my mind, I was always thinking, okay, we're going to have books, like we're going to be talking about it all the time. They're going to read about it. They're going to know about it. And so I always had that in the back of my mind of like embryo adoption books I would have. And we ended up not even using them, which we'll get into later, I'm sure. But I kind of, at one point, I'm a high school teacher now, but I had a stint of not teaching. And
Right.
I felt like in that non-teaching job, I was just like lacking a purpose because I didn't have any, connection with kids or anything. So I was like, okay, I'm going to write. I didn't use my embryos, but I'm going to write a book that would help other parents who did to be
Because you
able to
went through
read
the
to them.
process of thinking it through and trying to figure out how to address that
Yeah.
at the appropriate time. Well, let's talk. I'd love to talk about your perspective, maybe your husband's perspective, as much as you're able to speak for him,
Yeah.
how the effect that has on the relationship, and then ultimately what the thoughts are for the child to be. So when you were having trouble getting pregnant, you looked at various options.
Hmm.
So how did you make that decision of from adoption to IVF to all the various means? How did you look at each of those, and how did you ultimately decide on
Embryo
embryo
adoption.
adoption?
Yeah, okay, so it was a whole long whenever we first started trying to get pregnant, I was, like, 26, 27, and so I just assumed, like, we're good to go. It's gonna
Yeah,
happen right away, especially because it's like everyone you hear about is pregnant, like, first try,
right.
and so I know my brother had 2 kids already, and both of them, they were like, "Oh my god, we just thought about trying," and then it happened, so I was like, "Okay, great." And then it was taking a couple months, and they always tell you like 6 months about is average. But even in my mind, I'm like, okay, 6 months, that's probably factoring in maybe some older people. Like it shouldn't take that long for me. So, it's taking 6 months, 7 months, 8 months. And at my age, you're not allowed, or not allowed, but like the doctors won't really do anything for you until you've fully tried for a year. You've had
Okay.
unprotected sex for a year without getting pregnant. So that happened, and leading a few months leading up to that, I'm like, "This is
So you're
bad."
starting to get worried
I'm
in the
starting to get
5th,
worried.
6th month
Yeah,
or
like
okay.
before 6 months, because I'm like, first,
Do you think
second,
that was
third
fair,
month.
or it sounds like were you putting that pressure on you, or is because everyone around you had been pregnant that quick, so you just
Yeah.
thought it was
I
natural?
think obviously now that I had all those problems, I meet more people that do too, but you don't really hear about them as much. You just see everyone saying, "Oh, I'm pregnant, I'm pregnant, I'm pregnant."
Yeah.
So I'm thinking,
But you can appreciate people aren't gonna the hardships, they're not gonna share
yeah,
necessarily, but the joy of having being pregnant,
right.
it's all over social media.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking, okay, something is wrong, obviously, because it's taking way too long. Like after probably 4 months, I'm like, oh my God, something's wrong. So then I'm like super type A. So I'm tracking every little thing. And I remember I got these ovulation strips, and I could never even get a positive ovulation test. So I'm like, I don't even know if my body's ovulating. Anyways, so we got to the 1 year, and they were like, "Yeah, my regular OBGYN took a blood test, and the bad number that came back was my AMH, anti-Müllerian hormone, which is just
I know it might
like."
surprise you, but I don't know about that. So
Yeah, I
explain
didn't know
what
about any of this,
so
so
explain what that is.
I
There
don't know
a
why.
blood test and this AMH, is that what determines whether you get pregnant or what?
That's your ovarian reserve, so, like, how many eggs you have,
Okay.
or I guess they're unsure if it's the quantity or the quality, but something to do with the eggs. They think it's probably the quantity. So, I know, like I said, I was, like, 26, 27, and a regular AMH level is supposed to be, like, 4, and mine was point 0.3.
Ooh,
So I looked that up,
on
and
the
that's like a
that's
like
not good.
menopausal what like my doctor was like, okay, you're showing signs of, or you have like the numbers of like a mid 50-year-old, and I'm not even 30. So I'm like, okay, at least I was kind of like, okay, I knew there was something wrong. So
Did you immediately think it was something wrong with your system and not your husband's? Because I hear it takes both.
yeah, I don't know if I was. I thought that I didn't know if it was mine or his, but I knew like they could go ahead and test. They'll just test me first,
See, I
and
always
everything
thought
was
it's
fine.
always the woman's job is to always blame the man. So that doesn't happen in this case.
No, but you know what? There's actually there was a moment where once we found out it was mine, they went ahead and checked his sperm too, just to make sure like we're only dealing with one issue.
Right?
And I remember vividly, like they got his numbers back, everything was fine. His mom happened to be in town,
Yeah.
and he like read the numbers off his phone, and he was like, "Oh, we're good. Like this is how many millions of whatever sperm per thing," and they like high fived. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm over here." I know they were just kind of being
Your
goofy, but
mother-in-law was very proud that she
that
had
she had
created a husband that was
with
sperm
strong
bearing.
sperm. Yes. So there was no issue with him. It was just my eggs. And the worst part I think of all of this is I kept thinking like anytime we'd find something wrong, I was like, okay, I don't have a lot of eggs. That's fine. The doctors were still like, you're young, like you might not have a lot, but they're gonna be good eggs because you're so young.
Okay.
So whenever you go to an IVF clinic, you can go straight to IVF, which is where they take your eggs out, and then they get the sperm and they do it all outside of your body and then they put it back in.
Okay.
Or there's IUI, which intrauterine insemination. So they just kind of like they don't take the eggs out, but they'll like place the sperm where it needs to be inside of you, and that's like less invasive
Lead the horse
than
to water and hope it
yeah.
drinks. How about
Yeah.
that for a male version of this?
Yeah. So they
So, but before you did the IVS, though, let's take a step back. That did you look at adoption? Did you look at other things, or did you just go immediately to IVF as the solution?
I think we went to the I keep saying the IVF doctor. She's really just an infertility doctor. So I wasn't thinking IVF straight away. We were looking at that IUI option. We were also, I know people always tell me Clomid, which Clomid is like I think it's pretty widespread. Like if you're having any issues, you can take these pills and then it just kind of like jumpstarts some stuff. But they're starting to take numbers, and they're looking at like my follicles, like basically all the normal standards of, okay, are you showing like signs of fertility are just like not looking good. So I maybe am just an impatient person. She's kind of like, we can try this, or we can try this, or we can try this, but IVF is like gonna get it done. And
Okay.
I did honestly myself, I remember telling my husband, I don't need to be pregnant. Like I could go to adoption because I didn't feel this like need to have it be my kids. But my husband did. He was like, "No, I want it to be my kid and my blood." Like he
Well,
has this
clearly he was
vision
proud
of
of all that sperm he had, so he wanted to use them.
Yeah, yeah, that was a big difference of, like, I guess maybe it is more like a male thing of, like, carrying on the genes, like, I was kinda like, if I adopt them or they're mine or I carry them, they're gonna be my kid, like, it doesn't really
That's
matter to
interesting you
me.
say that because in research on this, it does seem like there is a psychological challenge between is it my kid and what that is going to, their traits and their background and how you're going to receive that versus, the IVF or kind of the genetic type thing where you're trying to figure out, how this baby is going to be created.
Yeah. Yeah, for honestly, I don't know, I just wanted a baby, and I knew that no matter how I got it, I would have, like, a connection to it. So, that was kind of an option, we looked into it, but adoption is insane.
I've
Like,
heard.
and I mean, IVF is not cheap at all either, but just I mean, we're talking like $60,000, like no question, straight up to even
For
for regular adoption.
adoption.
Like,
And then the certainty level, it sounds like IVF, you're almost certain of something happening, where adoption,
yeah,
it
you
could
never know if
drag
it's gonna
for
fall through. And we looked into my sister is a foster mom, or she was, and so a lot of people will foster to adopt, but then sometimes you'll have a kid for like a year, and you're like, this is my kid, and then it goes back to the parents. So I was like, I do not want to go through that.
a lot of emotional attachment yanked
Yeah.
from you. So, well, let's talk a couple more things about you before we move on. And your very spermy husband there.
Mm.
Um, how how did you feel going through that? Was it that I had read that the woman feels like her body has kind of failed her or
Yeah.
something hadn't. Is that what you felt? And I don't mean to be putting words, but how did this make you think about your body and what you could have done and what you should have done? And
I think I'm less likely to be a person who's gonna feel, like, guilty about it. I was more just so mad, and I was thinking, like, "Okay, this is
mad
never gonna
at what?
happen." Just mad that this is happening to me.
Okay,
Like, I
fair enough.
because honestly, I think it was a very humbling experience for me because I'm so like, I was like, "I'm healthy, I eat right, I exercise, I do like, this shouldn't happen to me." Like, I would always think if people have issues that it's like choices like lifestyle choices they're making. So I think it was in the long run, it might have been a good thing I have a lot more empathy for people because I realize, like, it just happens. Even when people give birth and they have, like, a crazy, like, super bad birth experience, now I realize, like, you just never know what's gonna happen, and
Yep.
it's not up to, like, your choices that make that happen. Sometimes, like, bad things just
Well,
happen.
and I know we're not talking miscarriages, but those happen all the
Right.
time, and people aren't sharing. But that, not having a child, here you are, 26. A lot of your friends were probably having kids. Sounds
Yeah.
like your family were having kids. There's a lot. It's hard not for that to put pressure on you.
Yeah, yeah, I think I was just, like, getting jealous, like, I wanted to have kids, and I had this I'm a big planner, so I had this plan of, like, I want my first kid at this age, and my first kid at this age, and or my second kid at this age, and it's like everyone is just, like, passing me up, and I remember thinking, like, my brother's, my husband's brother had a kid already while we're still trying, and I remember thinking, like, if we had a kid whenever I wanted to, like, our kid would be older than their kid, and they like, this kid's already born. It was just it was, like, a lot of jealousy, honestly. I just wanted a kid, and you
Sure.
feel bad because everyone is so happy when they're telling you, and then I am happy for them, but I was, like, had to try to not look disappointed every time I heard someone
Right.
else getting pregnant. So it was just because it
And
was,
I
like,
think that's
every
very
month.
natural.
Yeah.
What about fear of well, you're 26, so maybe that's not the case. But did it ever kind of click in that, okay, I'm 26, a year later, I'm 27, still not like there was a fear of time that maybe you're running out of time?
Yeah, I think that's also too why we eventually did go the IVF route is my doctor was like, "You have good eggs in there, but, is it gonna be next year? Is it gonna be 10 years? Like, there's just not a lot, so there's not a good chance. Like, we don't know when it's gonna come." So I was like, "Okay, I don't know how long I wanna wait, and then what if I can't have 2?" I was like, "I do not wanna have only 1 kid, I wanna have 2." So I was kinda like, "Let's get this moving because I wanna make sure that I can have at least 2 because if it takes forever, then I'm, like, really not gonna have
So 2
enough."
times forever is a long forever.
Yeah.
So it's, all right. Now, when we talked before, you said I could ask any question. So here goes. You talked about how you were type A and worrying about, testing and all. What does this do to one's sex life?
Oh,
Because it seems like it has the potential to make it very clinical and very rigid and very kinda, "Oh my gosh, I'm ovulating," or "I've got a certain temperature," and just takes all the fun out of it and
yeah.
all the natural aspects of it.
Yeah, sometimes it almost made it more fun because it was like a game, like whenever you get hit your fertile window, you have just the short amount of time where you should be ovulating and like
So
you
you would
gotta
pop out of the bathroom and say, "It's my window?"
usually I'd give them a couple days like notice because yeah,
Oh,
you don't want
okay.
to be like, it's time right now, like we have to perform right now. But I'd kind of be like,
Is
okay,
it
on this
better to
day.
give 2 days notice that my window is open and we have to have sex, or is it better to surprise 'em?
So I guess I've done all of them, and as a guy, I don't think he really I mean, he was probably just excited that it was, like, a lot of
That he
time that
was
I was, like,
invited to
ready to go all
join.
the
Okay.
time. But, yeah, I think sometimes he was felt, like, pressured that, like, we gotta get it done because, if we're one of us working late, like, sometimes you just don't want to, and I'm like, "Well, we have to." So, definitely those times kinda like, that sucked, it's not fun. But it was kinda fun just being, like it ended up being kind of like a game, which was kind of fun, but definitely for a while, it was not it was like every time we're doing it, I'm thinking about that. I'm like, "Oh, hopefully I get pregnant now," instead of just, like,
Enjoying the
having sex.
moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, alright, well, that was the one surprise question there, but, I think I'm always curious about that, and I'm sure others. So let's now talk about your husband. I know he's not here, so this is your perspective on it. He didn't want to adopt. What do you think the male's kind of vision or thoughts on IVF, on going through all that? What was his part in this whole process?
He he made me feel better about a lot of it because whenever we started having issues, I, of course, am like, "Okay, maybe we're never gonna have them ever," and I just start spiraling, freaking out, thinking I'm never gonna have kids, and he the whole time was like, "We're gonna get them." He was like, "If we have to do IVF, if we have to end up adopting, if we like, we're going to get kids," and I remember thinking, like, "I'm not sure," and he was like, "We're gonna do it," because I was thinking money-wise, obviously. It was so much money,
Right?
and we're still young, like, we're only a few it's, like, right after we got married, a couple years after college, and so it was nice him always being like, "It's gonna happen," because I think I might have been a lot more, like, worried and just started thinking it's not gonna happen
No,
at all.
generally, it's the guy that is the "let's fix it," but
Yeah.
it sounds like you were the "let's fix it" mentality because you wanted the kid there, but also it's your body, you're kinda more in control of that.
Yeah.
How do you see that happening? In your case, I guess, is that right, that you were kinda more of the, "Let's get this done, let's fix it," and he's kind of not along for the ride, but he had to be more in the support role?
Yeah, I think I would have an idea, and to start off with, I was always worried, like, "Oh, is he gonna wanna do this?" But it was kinda like, I'd look into things and, "We should try this," and he'd think, "Okay, yeah." So, yeah, he was definitely just on board for, like, whatever we need to do to make it happen, like, "I know you really want this," and he really wanted it too. We were just 2 people who were definitely going to have kids, like, I have friends now that don't wanna have kids at all. I'm like, "That's fine. I
Sure.
just don't get it."
That
Like,
wasn't you. Well,
I
you're a
knew that I wanted to
teacher,
have
you've been
kids,
around
yeah.
kids, your whole life has been around kids, so
Yeah.
that's probably a little more natural there. So, from the financial pressure, you mentioned that a couple of times. Who felt more of that, you or him?
Ugh, I don't know. We look at finances so differently. I was always raised to be like super like cheap and not cheap, like frugal. Like I'm always thinking about like, oh, we can't afford this, and he's more like he's very good with money, but he's like he came from a family that does like stocks and stuff, and my dad owns his own small business and is like, don't ever take loans, like
Right.
pay everything off immediately. So we're both like good with money in very different ways. So I think I was just worried about it, thinking we don't have it, so we can't do it. And he
Right.
was like, no, we can, like, we found out from from our financial advisor, you can take a loan against your 401k and it really doesn't affect it much. Like you're only really losing on like the gains that you would get during that time.
That's
Um
what I was gonna ask. How do you because if it is 60,000, I think you threw that number out, a lot of people can't afford that. So
yeah.
how do they approach it? I assume there's not a, infertility loan center. So
Yeah,
you're
no,
having
there's
to
like
just
no
figure it
help.
out through 401k, through family, through,
Yeah. So the
whatever.
60,000 was for like adoption, like adopting a
Oh, that's right,
child.
you said
So the
that.
IVF wasn't going to be that much, but with IVF, you do a round. You can kind of ballpark it at
About
like
how much
$20,000 a
okay,
round, but you don't know if that's going to work. That's what sucks, is you're like, okay, it's going to be this much. If it works, like we might have to do another one, and then you got to transfer it. That's more money. So it's just like an unknown
what do you
of
mean
like
transfer it?
like once you
Oh,
take
put
out
it
the
back
eggs,
into
put
your
it back
body.
in.
Okay, I got
So
you.
there's just like multiple costs that keep coming up. And
And does insurance cover this? Probably not.
no, no, he worked for Toyota and they had, I don't know if it was like a coverage, some sort of like, it wasn't insurance, but Toyota had kind of like an IVF, like a allotment, which is
Okay.
super rare. Like we
Yeah,
got really lucky with that.
probably because of a large,
Yeah, super
more
big company.
progressive
But
company.
even with that, like it was crazy. So
So it's do you think he, emotionally was able to share his feelings and it's not really about your relationship with him, but just, if I'm sitting there kinda watching you, my wife, have go through all this, do I just kinda keep all my emotions in check because you might be more emotional?
yeah.
Help me, I'm not phrasing this right, but do you see where I'm heading with
Yeah,
this?
like how is he deciding to help? He's really good at that. Like I think he just felt really bad for me because it was quote unquote my fault. So like I had the issue. So I think he was just very like, definitely I'm the most, he's an emotional guy. So he would, we'd both be like crying about things at certain times, but I think he was more just like whatever you want to do. And then I'm also very like, some people when they have issues like this, they don't want to talk about it.
Right.
I want to talk about everything to everyone.
Oh,
So
okay.
my way of like coping with it was I was just talking about it to everyone. Like everyone knew everything. And he was a little more like, we don't need to be saying this to everyone. Like wait until something is happening. And I'm like, well, I just like get so excited about the prospect of it happening. So really it was me just kind of talking with all my friends about like, okay, this is the stage we're in now and this is how many eggs we got and blah blah blah. And he's just letting me do that, even though I think he'd rather it be a little more like close to us,
But that didn't cause issues that you were so
open
visible
about
with
it.
it and open about it, and he was sounds like more private about it.
Yeah. It didn't cause issues just because that is our relationship. Like IVF
He knows what he
aside.
has,
Yeah, like
and you know
I
what
talk about
you have.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that relationship because and you've kind of alluded to it, but I would think there'd be some challenges with some of that through there.
Yeah.
What did you see? And we've talked some, but what else am I missing?
Okay, so this was the main issue, was once we got to embryo adoption, which I still didn't talk about exactly like why we ended up with
Yeah,
that.
please do.
When I went to the IVF doctor and we were kind of like, all right, we can't do IUI. We can't do like we went past all of the other options and went straight to IVF because she was like, this is your best chance if you want to make sure that you're going to have more than one kid. We went straight to that. We did a round, so that means they go in, they take out your eggs, and then they fertilize them. If you are a person who is my age at that time, you're supposed to get like 25, 30 eggs. And I got 7,
Oh, wow.
which was expected because I have the problem of
Okay,
low egg reserve. So I
good
was
point.
like, ooh, that's not enough, but also it should be fine because I should have good quality eggs. Because it's kind of like it's like an exponential function of like you have this many eggs that are retrieved, and then only half of them are going to be fertilized, and only half of them will make it to the embryo stage. So it just like keeps getting lower. So with 7, I'm thinking, okay, if I could get like 3, at least one of them should work. Because now at this point, I'm thinking maybe I do only have 1 kid. That's fine. I just want 1. And so when we got 7, it was like, okay, this is probably fine. We ended up with 4 embryos once they were fertilized and they got to the stage of like these are embryos that we can use. They tested them, so we use something called PGT testing. I don't know what it stands for, but that's like a controversial thing now because you can test for like it'll tell you if there's the gender first of all, which I know people don't, that it gets into like eugenics and stuff. And I remember we had the gender like blocked out. I didn't care about the gender, but I wanted to know that they were going to be like viable embryos basically if they have some sort of genetic defect. And that's, it'll tell you about like Down syndrome. And it was never like, okay, I'm not going to use them if they have like something like that. It was more like, is this going to create a baby? Like, is there a big enough genetic issue that it's just going to be a miscarriage or a stillborn? And so we did that with all 4 of them unviable. And the way that they explained it to me is the issues in your chromosomes are like less severe the higher the chromosome. So like, Down syndrome is trisomy 21 because there's 24 chromosomes. So 21 is not that big of a deal. Like your baby is going to live. It's not like you're not going to have a baby. And then there's trisomy 18. That's a more severe issue. And then I think trisomy 13 is basically like the lowest number chromosome where you could even have a like live birth, and
Okay.
they usually only will live for a couple days. So all of mine were like 8, 9, 10, 11, where my doctor
Wow.
was like, this is not going to be like a disability. This is something where a person would have had a miscarriage in like week 5,
Mm.
or they would never even have found out they were pregnant. Like these are structural problems where these are not going to produce a baby. So I couldn't use any 4 of those. So I got the 7 eggs, I had the 4 embryos, and then they were like, you can't use them. And during that, at the same time that I found that out, I remember I was teaching. They called me while I was teaching and told me like none of them worked. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
At the same, like a couple days later, we were already going through another cycle to get more, and my body stopped responding to that medication. So then we didn't get any. So basically 2 cycles, nothing worked.
And each cycle's $20,000?
We ended up spending like 25. I think it's
Okay.
probably like 20 if you didn't have the help from Toyota.
Okay.
So once we went through those 2 cycles, I was like, all right, I'm done. Like, how many times are we going to keep doing this? None of them work. And this is where I told him, I was like, I want to do an egg donor, embryo adoption, something, because my sister had already said, like, I will donate my eggs to you if it comes to that. And that's kind of like a weird thing too. I remember us thinking, my husband is like, it's going to be my sperm and your sister's eggs, but I thought it would create, it's like, in the family still.
Facial features,
yeah.
things like that should be more similar.
So the reason that we kind of ended up bickering about stuff is because when we finally landed on embryo adoption, we didn't go for an egg donor because that's like way even more expensive than just adopting the already made embryos, because like my sister doesn't have a diagnosed infertility problem. So there's like no coverage, no help for anything if she's giving the eggs to me, because there's no reason for her to do IVF to give me the eggs.
Right.
And when you adopt embryos, they're already tested. So like my 4 that got tested and were not viable, there wouldn't be that problem, because when you adopt them, you adopt tested, ready to go. Like they're like, there's no issue with these. They should work. It's just like your regular chances of a bit, like sometimes miscarriages happen for no reason. So it's not 100%, but there's no like underlying reason why they wouldn't create a baby. So it's just like the most economical, surefire, these are good to go embryos. We know they're going to work. So whenever you adopt embryos, you can you fill out a questionnaire of like preferences, I guess, like you and the people giving you their embryos. So it's basically like someone who did IVF and they had leftover embryos.
Right.
They can say preferences for the recipient, and then we can say preferences for the ones that like the type of embryos that we want to, and they like match you up. So I had no preferences. I was like, give me whatever. Like, I just want a baby. Cause then I started thinking, oh my gosh, we could have like a blended family. Like
There's no preference. You didn't want to like think about IQ or height or
I didn't.
race or any of that stuff.
No, and that's where it came. My husband was like, really thinking about that stuff. And I was like,
Yeah.
absolutely not. I was like, I'm not going to pick and choose. Like, that feels weird. And the
Yeah.
main thing was like
It starts leaning
race.
toward genetic
Yes.
engineering, but if you had that option, why not pick one that's gonna score 1,600 on the SAT
Yeah.
and run, you know, a a fantastic, 40-meter run
Yeah.
and all that?
He ended up, it just came down to, I was like, started to get started thinking like, okay, we already have this weird journey, so like it'd be cool if we had like different race children, like this whole big blended family. And he was like, no, we are already putting this kid in like a weird position where they're gonna feel, when they finally understand it, they're gonna might feel weird about it. So why would we make them look more different than us than they need to be? And that was our main argument. Is he was like, I want it to be like white family, and I was like, that feels terrible for me to put. I will only accept white embryos. But he ended up convincing me. It wasn't like, it's not like he's like, no, I don't want non-white children. He was just like,
No.
why would I not want them to look more like us? And I was like, okay, I get it. Like, it's more helpful to the baby. So that was really our arguments of like, I was like, I don't want to take forever to be matched with one. Like, I want to have a baby, so I don't care. But he ended up convincing me, and there was still a little bit like when I filled out mine, I just said, we're both very average people. So I was like average height, average weight, white, whatever. And he was like putting like his features, like everything. And I was like, we can't have a 6 foot, 170 pound, like white guy with red hair. Like he was just being so specific. So
Oh, how
we ended
funny.
up, it was fine. Like we finally just agreed, like, okay, we'll get one that looks similar to us. But I know we actually, the ones that we adopted, the man that came back, you get just kind of like, you don't know like IQ and stuff, but they'll just tell you like their background, if they went to college, their height and weight, and like hair color, eye color. The dad was like 6'4". So my husband was like, "Oh, nice. we
There we
might
go.
have
Might
we
have a
might have
basketball player.
yeah." But yeah, we didn't even end up using them, but that was really the only kind of like arguments we had. Of he was just wanting to be very specific on like the ones that we got, more just to help them out, to feel more like us.
Well, and that right there is a great transition. We did all this kind of prep to your book, but now you're talking about kind of the thought process for the kid that would be produced and kind of worrying about how that would be received. And part of that is how do you tell
Yeah.
the child that wasn't necessarily done naturally, it was done through IVF or some other means. So
Yeah.
walk us through how you all decided, and you had that therapy session where you decided to tell them soon, but walk
Yeah.
me through all of that and kind of how that fits with your book.
Yeah. So, okay. So, Pieces of Leah is, this is a book that you're supposed to use for if your kid was born from embryo adoption, or I don't know, surrogacy, egg donor, any sort of like, we call it alternative family building. It's just about a girl that basically asks her parents, like, where did I come from? And she was born from embryo adoption. So her parents are like, oh, this is like a more complicated conversation. And it's like a whole puzzle piece
Hmm.
metaphor of like, okay, you have
No,
the,
I thought that was really cool how you had those puzzle
yeah.
pieces and it kind of walked
And you
through.
did say that I illustrated this. I didn't. I do want to make a point.
That is true.
This
And
is one of my
tell the
former
story because it's
students.
that's
Yeah.
right. That was
Beatrice
actually better.
Levin, I taught her in student council, actually. I teach math, but I do student council too. And she was in my student council class, and she was the go-to like art drawing posters
No,
person.
she did a wonderful
She's
job with
super
that.
good.
So so what were the other considerations of, okay, if I ended up having this child through embryo adoption, what were the considerations? It was when to tell,
Yeah.
but then were you worried about how you would treat that child maybe different than if it was a natural born child or not natural born, but naturally conceived child?
Yeah.
What were the other kind of considerations that you might have had?
I think we almost kind of got excited to be like, we picked you. And that's kind of, the book goes into that too. Like, we wanted a baby so bad and we couldn't do it. Like, we had another mom and dad help us to make you. Like, it more became a thing that we would always tell our kids, like, we wanted you so much. We went through all these crazy things. We picked you. So I think I was just excited, and I would hope that, I'm not sure what the kids feel like that are made that way, but I would hope that they would feel like, oh, this is so cool. Like, they went through these crazy lengths to get us because it wouldn't work the natural way.
And I'm sure, and you alluded to it, when you tell, but how you tell and how you reinforce it with your actions,
Yeah.
I think would have a huge effect on how that child receives that information.
Yeah.
So it's well, that's a wonderful story. So bring us to up to speed. You ended up having children. You didn't have to use the adopted
Yeah.
embryo. Tell us where your family stands now.
Yeah, so I have, 2 just naturally born girls. Mackenzie, we call her Mac. She is almost 4, and then Tanner is almost a year and a half. Yeah, both times we were, like, lined up with the doctor's office, ready to go to put in those adopted embryos, and then I just got pregnant. It's crazy. It's like,
And I've
I
heard
keep
that
telling.
story many times. I
Yeah.
think it's almost like the stress gets removed, or you don't
Yeah.
focus on it,
Or
and
like
then
the
all of a sudden,
medicine, like, jump-started something. We always joke, we're like, "These kids just made us spend all this money and, like, go through all this, like, terrible times to
well, I
say,
hate to
'Okay,
break
we're
it, but
ready.'"
that's just the beginning of the money that you get to spend on kids. They don't get cheaper.
I
You
know.
just you got some practice on spending money, and especially with a girl.
Girls, yeah,
Yeah,
both
you're
girls.
you're going to get used to it and tell your husband that that is only the beginning
Yeah, that
of
was
the
just
money that you're
training.
going to be sending. So, well, Haley, thank you very much for coming in, telling the story, and what a fabulous story. So happy for you that it came together in such a fabulous way with a wonderful family. So,
Yeah, thank you.
well, let's clear the table here. It's today you've heard a some interesting thoughts on how a family looks at having a children when they might not be able to have it naturally or conceived naturally. A lot of issues, a lot of questions, emotional, different perspectives, but it seems like it always comes together. And what I saw with Haley and her family was a lot of communication, a lot of discussion, leaning on therapists when they needed, but really just kind of having a great bond between the husband and the wife. And with that, they ended up uh, having a fabulous family, even without having to go through the embryo adoption. So thank you very much for joining the grown-up table, and look forward to having you join us again later.